should get started.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Hi, Jamie.
Okay, we're all here. Great, so, the first thing is John.
All right, I guess I'm swearing everybody in. So there are two oaths, and I could get all of you at once. For the second oath, I'll have to do the mayor separately, but if everyone that's swearing in would like to say.
Why don't you go over there for the photo op?
Yeah.
You over here? We're really, can you get this on?
There you go, that's a good spot.
Sorry.
Should put the mayor in front.
Do you want to go this way?
No, it's okay. No, Mayor, you should be there.
What's up?
Like a cadet review.
We could switch Connor, and you guys can go hide over.
Yeah, I know it. That's all right.
Okay,
We're a bell curve.
hands up, you're on the right.
Supposedly the sound is off.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will be true and faithful to the state of Vermont and that you will not directly or indirectly do any act or thing injurious to the Constitution or government thereof, so help you God, or under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Now you four. Hands up. Yep.
Is this going through the website here or through YouTube?
I don't know. I just got a text from former employee Jamie saying the sound was off. Oh, she says it's on now.
Okay.
It's on now?
Do you
Yep.
solemnly swear
Thanks, Jamie.
or affirm that you will faithfully execute the office of City Council Member for the City of Montpelier and will therein do equal right and justice to all persons to the best of your judgment and ability according to law, so help you God, or under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Right, you all are sworn in.
Nice.
You're not.
Thank you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will faithfully execute the office of Mayor for the City of Montpelier and will therein do equal right and justice to all persons to the best of your judgment and ability according to law, so help you God, or under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
You are now mayor again.
Okay. Thank you, and so now on to the agenda. So the first thing is to call the meeting to order, and reviewing and approving the agenda. We, I think, are not taking up item 15, the downtown master plan, and so we have an item that's an appointment to the homelessness task force, which since the person has rescinded their application, I assume we will not be doing that item either. And so any further amendments to the agenda? Okay, so on to general business and appearances, and I'm actually going to take the first spot here, and then I'll explain how this works. So I just wanted to start out by reading a statement that the city has regarding the coronavirus COVID-19. We've certainly been getting a lot of questions about that, so hopefully this is clarifying. So the city has been working with the state's Department of Health and Emergency Management Department to closely monitor the emerging coronavirus health crisis. In health emergencies of this magnitude, the state departments and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, are the primary agencies for accountable for response. The city has been putting in place plans in response to the coronavirus. The city's main focus is how to mitigate impact to core vital services, protect staff and residents in their interactions with the city services, and how to best support city employees through expanding access to sick leave. The city has put in place extra cleaning policies where staff have been asked to add disinfecting their workspaces to their daily tasks. Depending on the severity of this unfolding health crisis, the city may need to reprioritize services and could consider canceling big public events, prioritizing the roads being plowed, which is weather dependent, or other services. Staff will continue to meet weekly for the foreseeable future to ensure city plans are current and thorough. We have already postponed some events at the senior center, the March for Meals fundraiser and the rummage sale, as we know that it serves a more vulnerable population. This situation is ever-changing, so the city will be putting weekly response updates in the weekly report, which is available online, and through frequent social media updates. We've also made a webpage available compiling the most accurate resources for the public, available under the Community tab on our website's homepage banner. And as a reminder, the CDC has prepared some simple steps you can take to protect yourself. Surfaces and objects that you interact with need to be wiped with disinfectant regularly. Ensure that you are washing your hands thoroughly and regularly. Washing kills the virus on your hands and prevents the spread of COVID-19. Also, avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Make sure you are practicing good respiratory hygiene. Cough or sneeze into disposable tissue or your elbow, and wash your hands afterwards. If you develop a cough or low-grade fever, which is 99 degrees Fahrenheit or more, you need to stay home and recover. So that is all that we have to, at least the city had to say about that at this point. And as things develop, we'll update that information. So thank you. And then, so general business and appearances. The way this typically works is that this is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the council on a topic that is otherwise not on our agenda. And if you would say your name and where you live, and try to keep your comments to about 2 minutes or less, that'd be great. Any comments from the public? No? Okay. All right, moving on. So on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion or any discussion?
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
And any amendments? Yes.
No, sorry, just second.
Just like, any discussion?
I just wondered if indeed there's any change in the status with the virus that some parades might be canceled.
Well, that's potentially, that's a big event that might, I think, fall under that category, so that's
Just, I guess, mindful when people are getting this okay that that's possible.
So people have been asking about that, and we've said, we're not in a position yet to necessarily shut down. We haven't been guided by the state health department, but we've also told people it's possible that could happen. But we also don't want to be in a situation, particularly, I think one of these is for August, when perhaps the threat may have passed, and then they don't have time to get all their stuff in order. So we said, plan, but understand that it could be canceled, and people have been very understanding about that. And as the mayor mentioned, we're having emergency team meeting every Friday and evaluating all these types of things. Actually, while we're on that topic, even though it's not really a consent, I just want to add something that has happened since the statement was prepared. It's just minor, but just so people know, there's a meeting, I think, tomorrow of all the regional police chiefs, and another meeting coming up next week of all the regional water and sewer plant people, just to talk about sharing people if necessary and backing everybody up so that nobody is left with those services. So communities are rallying to the cause.
That's good. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we have some orientation. So for this, I will turn over to the city manager.
Well, I don't have much for general orientation. What I will say, two things. One is we put your handbook. Maybe if you have seen this before, it is very similar to prior years, but it has got new, as we've had staff changes, so it has the latest names and numbers and emails. There are a few things that have changed slightly over the course of the year, and we've tried to update those as much as possible. It's for the newer members. There's the open meeting laws in here, the public records law, certain advice. There's a lot of our procedural things. So rather than go through all of them, even though I did threaten to read this entire book, I would call the attention really to sort of pages 9 through 15 15, I guess, which kind of walks through in short steps the way we handle certain things, and then if there are questions as things come up from there, happy to take them. Don't need that now. One of the things we'll talk about more under the strategic planning, but there's also inclusion of some meeting guidelines and roles of different people. On pages 20 and 21, these were things drawn up by a prior city council a couple of years ago, and I think reenacted 2 years ago. Our own, the communication guidelines, and actually starts on page 19, I'm sorry, the group norms policy development process. So we're going to suggest that we hold a workshop meeting sometime pretty soon, just to, it doesn't have to be super long, but to go through these with this group of 7, to either change them, update them, reaffirm them, and just talk through roles. That would be something. In years past, we did it with the consultant, with the strategic planning, but we think this year we'll do it separately. And just so when we're talking about dates for strategic planning, we might also want to be thinking about a date for this, maybe even pretty quickly. And again, I don't think this is a 4-hour meeting or anything, but I also don't think it's something we want to do on a regular meeting night, unless you want to do it tonight.
We'll talk more about that
Yeah.
too later. Yeah.
So that's really about all I have for orientation. I've got regular meetings scheduled up with Jay, with Dan, Lauren, and the mayor, and the other 3 pop in on me whenever. So I'm happy to do orientations individually. We will be trying to schedule tours. Usually we try to provide tours for the new members, but we let everybody know because sometimes either somebody missed an event last year or just wants to go back and see a facility again. And we may actually even have some new staff that wants to hop on board as well. So we
Want to go down the pole?
You want to go on the pole again? Well, we'll do that with video. So, all new council, that's a requirement. You have to go down the fire pole. That's the other part of the oath, right? You didn't put that in. You're not actually fully a member until you've gone down the fire pole.
All right. So, any questions on the handbook or any other aspect of the orientation? Okay. And just on the topic of the tours, how are we going to go about scheduling those, do you think?
I would probably put Jasmine in charge of getting in touch with Dan and Jay as the primary tour people and schedule them with them, and then let everyone else know.
Okay, great.
That's at least how we've done it previously, is that the newer people are the priority, but then anyone can jump on.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll expect those emails. Okay, so any other comments about this? Okay, great. Moving on then. To the ethics policy. So this is for the city council. And we, do you have any comments on that, Bill?
Only that we do adopt this ethics policy formally. It's not changed much in recent years, but we still make it a practice of putting it on this first agenda every year so that there's a record that this particular group of 7 saw it, read it, agreed to it, and has accepted it as their rules. Obviously, it can be, and of course, you can always bring it up later too. But it's these are the ethics policy. I think, as you can see, we first adopted it in 1999, and it's been coming through ever since.
Donna?
We have one piece in here that mentions when someone speaks, they'll be recognized by the chair and are required to state their name and address. And that sometimes has been hard to get people to do, but I do think it's helpful to know what district they're from, so we get a sense of where the certain opinions lie and where we're missing some.
I think you might be in the rules.
Rules of procedure.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's coming up.
I'm onto the wrong page.
No worries.
It's not my mark.
That's okay.
This is mostly regarding conflicts of interest.
Page number is that?
Well, so it's not in. Well, it is.
27.
It's in the
Page
book,
27.
but it's also in the agenda.
Electronic up, but I prefer-
Yeah.
Got you.
Okay, thank you.
So just on the ethics policy, any comments? Connor, yeah.
I was gonna move to adopt the council ethics policy.
Yep. I just want to note that I should have said this beforehand, but under section 4C's public body should be bolded, just like the rest of.
Oh, right.
That's
Okay, got it. We'll take care of that.
meaningful. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Further discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention, and I don't know how many people are watching the meeting on television, but during the last several months, there's been public discussion about allegations of bribery and claims that the city ethics policy has no enforceable prohibition on bribery. And I just wanted to mention that it's actually a crime under Vermont law for someone to bribe or attempt to bribe a public official, or for a public official or officer to accept a bribe. And so the idea that there's no effective prohibition on bribery is just false, and it's important to say that I'm sure that everyone on the council and city employees take these principles very seriously.
Thank you for raising that. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. All right, and so now we are on to the rules of procedure. So Donna, so you want to revisit your
Do
point
I have
there?
to do it again, or you just want to respond?
Well, I feel like I interrupted you.
No, I was in the wrong place, it's fine.
But anyway, so if you have more on that.
So it's on the page 24, where it talks, it's number 4, the members must be recognized by the chair and are required to state their name and address. And I think it's helpful, you don't have to tell me 9 Pine Street, but at least Pine Street, so I know where you are district-wise. And it does confirm whether somebody lives in town or doesn't, so I prefer we do that,
So by address, you're hoping for people's street name.
yeah, not town, but address. But maybe that isn't how everybody else interprets it, so that's part of my question.
It seems like that would be helpful to know, particularly if, to know whose district the person is speaking from. Other thoughts on that?
I agree with that. I think it's helpful to know where people are coming from when they speak. And obviously, there's nothing in here that requires that only people who are residents of Montpelier speak, and people should not get the impression that they have to live here in order to address the council. We're open to anyone who has views they want to share with us.
Yeah. Any other comments on these rules?
If I could
Dan.
just ask a clarifying question. When we talk about number 4, this would seem to apply to not only the general public session, but then whenever there's open to public comment, such as if we're discussing an ordinance or such, we would seek that sort of identifying information. I don't have a problem with it as a practice, and certainly as a rule of procedure, it's something that can be enforced or not. I'm ultimately concerned that people have an opportunity to speak, and I think that this is a good discussion because it underlines that it's helpful for everyone to understand. Is this a resident speaking about something that they're personally impacted by, or is this somebody, from out of town who may have some insight into this, where they're coming from in the context. So, I just want to make sure that understanding when we would ask them for their addresses, as opposed to somebody who's sitting and presenting who we kind of already know why they're here and why they're presenting, making that a requirement or rule of procedure. Does that make sense?
Yes, so we would ask this of anybody speaking to the council, even if it's not during general business appearances, but just on any item.
On anything, and
Yeah.
uniformly in force, so that it's not just not just some, but all.
Yeah. Jack?
But I think that if the city, in fact, has an engineer who's doing work for us, and if they come and say, I'm me from such and such an engineering firm, I think that's an adequate identification.
It actually makes me wonder if we should amend that to say, like, or their affiliation with the city.
Right. That's actually, I think, a fair point, because, you know, if this person is coming up to speak as the engineer, not as the resident of Pine Street.
Right. Unless
That's more
we're
helpful.
defining the audience as not including that.
Right.
But I don't know that it's. Would we like to amend it to say something like that, or do you want to just understand that that's how we're interpreting it? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm comfortable just adopting it as is.
Yeah.
I think if anything, some of these smaller nitpicks might be something that we can think about down the line, and it may be something we can always amend if we choose to. In whole, I would be loath to just take this one line and change it when there might be other sections, and it might make more sense to just have a review as part of our orientation as we get our feet under us as a new council.
Sounds good. Donna?
So we have this made up and it's attached to the mic here. I don't know if there's one on the table, but it actually says, introduce yourself, name, where you live. And so sometimes we do get a lot more towns that way versus address. So maybe we want to change this to match here, or
That would make sense.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. Sounds good. All right, any further comments about the rules of procedure?
I'll move
Dan.
that we adopt the city council rules of procedure as originally adopted in 1963 and as last amended in March of 2014.
I'll second.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so now we need to elect some officers from within the city council. So typically there is a council president, vice president, and parliamentarian of the council. Jack,
I nominate Donna Bate to be council president.
are you willing to serve?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Second.
Okay, so there's any other nominations?
I'll just point out, as the current parliamentarian, seconds are not required for nominations.
Oh, thank you.
I did that a year ago, too. and-
Wow.
There we are.
That's
I think
good.
that's his campaign speech for
Good.
parliamentarian.
Fair enough.
You think we're going to let you leave that, Chuck?
Okay. Well, so I think we should probably vote on each of these individually. Any other nominations for president? Okay, so there was a motion. Didn't need a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, congratulations, Donna. Thank you.
Thank you.
And vice president.
I nominate Jack McCullough to be vice president.
Jack, are you willing to be?
I am willing to do that.
Okay. Any other nominations?
Can you be parliamentarian as well?
It's probably good to. Well, we can deal with that in a second. Any other nominations for vice president? No? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Jack. All right. And
You say you did need a second?
then we do not need a
Do
second
not.
for nominations. So, parliamentarian,
I would nominate Dan Richardson.
you willing to serve?
I am willing to serve.
Okay. Any other any other nominations?
Yeah, unless Connor really wants
No,
to be.
God,
Or Lauren.
Or Lauren. Yeah.
I talked to
seniority.
Lauren.
Oh, yeah, if we're going with senior system.
Okay. No other nominations. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Well, thank you, Dan. Okay. So I think that is it for this item. And so just so we're clear, like in case the president, or in case I'm out, president leads the meeting. In case we're both out, the vice president leads the meeting. And in case all three of us are out, then the parliamentarian, I assume leads the meeting. But
I don't know about
I'm not
that.
sure about that
Well,
that
we would
prospect.
have- Yeah, no.
I think you'd have to
You
elect.
probably know.
The Secretary of Agriculture at that point.
Okay, well, we'll hope that doesn't happen.
Maybe John Oden can look that one up for us.
There you go. All right. So now to committee appointments. That's my favorite part. Okay, so we have a number of boards or committees that the council has typically had some kind of representation on, either through a council member or through some kind of staff or resident representative. And so I think we just need to go through this one row at a time and see like who is interested in, are you interested in continuing to serve on that board? Who else might be interested? And we'll just take it one step at a time here. So hopefully you have a sense of what you are interested in, even at this point. So, Americans with Disabilities Committee. Jack, what's your thought on that?
I've been on it for a couple of years. I'm happy to stay on it.
Hey, anyone else interested? Nope. Okay. And great, you're willing to stay on. All right. So the Building Code Appeals Committee. Can you tell us something about that?
Yes, I can. In our building code, if people have an appeal, if they're not happy with a decision of the building inspector, they may appeal it, and it's basically the folks that you see here, 2 council members. It's actually 2 council members and a resident. The resident has been Jeff Stetter for a long time. We haven't actually re-advertised it for a period of time, which is something I could also consider. And then we have our staff, 2 staff people that deal with the building codes. So if somebody can do that, this used to be a somewhat active committee for seeking sprinkler variances, but since we relaxed the sprinkler requirements a couple of years ago, it has been a pretty non-active committee. But nonetheless, if someone were to, if Chris Lumber says you can't have this deck or this rail is inappropriate, and someone wanted to appeal that, then we need a local board to be able to hear that appeal. It is listed in our ordinances that we have it. So
we haven't had council representation. Or
Glenn and Rosie were our last 2
okay.
reps, and I think the way we left it last year was if we actually had a meeting and we needed a second one besides Glenn, we would try to recruit somebody at the time. But.
Okay. Anyone interested in serving on this as with Dan?
I am.
Okay. Anyone else? Lauren? Okay, great, thank you. No, anyone else interested? Okay, great, thank you. And it also occurs to me that we should probably check in with Jeff Stetter.
Right.
Just to make sure that he's still
Well, I
willing.
think there's 2 questions. One, is Jeff still interested? And 2, does nothing against Jeff, but does the council want to put it out to the community again, or is Jeff appointed for life? Or
It's the one office.
Yeah,
No,
that's-
no.
so-
Doesn't meet very often.
doesn't meet very often at all. no.
I think it's probably
Fine.
right for us to
Yeah.
put it out to just see who's interested, and Jeff can
Yeah.
say he's still interested.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bill, do you happen to know what chapter of the ordinances this is in?
It's in whatever, I don't. It's the
Okay.
building code, whatever the section is, the building codes. And there's just a short section at the end that says Board of Appeals.
Well, in our ordinance review, I don't think we've gotten to that yet, but it might be, when we get to that point, we might want to consider setting a length of term
Yeah,
as part of it.
it's a good idea.
All the building regulations are chapter 4.
Oh, so we passed it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can go back, we can look at it again.
Okay. Oopsies. Okay, capital improvement plan committee. So in the past, do you want to say this part?
You
So
can.
in the past, we have put new council members on this committee because it's a kind of a nice introduction to a lot of the work that the city does. So I don't know if you're interested in.
I would certainly step down. It's when it hasn't met for a while.
Yeah, we didn't meet this year. That was,
Yes.
it will be back next year.
But it's so educational on roads and what we do and why we do it that I think it's really good for new council members.
Yeah.
Or anybody who hasn't been on it before.
Jay,
I'd be happy to.
you'd be happy
Yeah.
to do that? And
Sure.
Dan, you're up for that?
Yeah, especially if this is the rookie committee.
Well, so what it is, just to be clear, it's good for getting to know projects. So in that case, it's good. But it is also we do is we draft our capital plan and all the various projects and where we propose to spend the capital money.
Right.
And this group usually meets in a pretty concentrated time. So it's usually like 2 weeks in a row in November as we're forming the budget. So it's not a year round, unless every now and then we might have a meeting in the middle of the summer to go over maybe water and sewer projects or something. But really, it's to preview that budget and make sure that that's where the city's priorities are. And then when the budget gets recommended to the council as a whole, it's with the recommendation of that committee. And the council as a whole can still change it, but it's been vetted at least by 3 people. We just, because of the way the budget went this year, we didn't do that. But we should, and it will be back.
So I am also listed to be on that committee. I would love to stay, but unless there's other folks who would like to serve on that committee. Okay. Okay, great. All right, Central Vermont Public Safety Authority. I feel like I should let Donna speak to this a little bit.
Well, I'm no longer appointed by the council. I actually ran for at-large to represent Barry and Montpelier. And there's a mistake on this list, is that Kim Cheney is also an at-large.
Right.
So right now, Montpelier does not have any representation on this board, and it should have 2 appointments. And whether that's council members or staff members from the public safety services.
And so actually one question there would be, do you think that, well, actually, let's start with this. Any council members interested in serving on that committee, on that board? Okay, so one possibility is, do you think that Tony would have any interest, or any other city staff might be, I mean, thinking about how Donna Bate, not Donna Bate, you're Donna Bartlett Casey.
Donna C., Donna B.
Yeah. Serving as the council's rep to the solid waste
District.
management board. Just thinking about the possibility of a staff person.
In the
You wanna get back
past,
to us?
yeah, we could get back to you. I think in the past, I mean, our staff members have been very active in this group. I think in the past, we've been reluctant to put staff people in what is a policy-making board, particularly when it was talking about potentially blending dispatch services or public safety services, so that these folks would be making decisions on their own employee type things. And I'm still honestly have that reservation. I think it would be better to have, citizen representation. That's what this is, but obviously with us providing technical expertise. But that said, I'd be happy to talk to our folks. Obviously Chief Fakis is only here till June, and I'm not sure he has interest in doing it as a private citizen. Maybe he does, but I don't think so. It's possible we've had that conversation. And I don't know about Chief Gowans or who else, but we can certainly check and see.
Okay.
But I think I'd like to talk about it with our folks. I'm
Yeah.
not sure how
No,
I
that's
feel
fair.
about it.
Donna?
I'll just point out that other regional systems do have, actually, most of the regional dispatches are for FAR, and they have their chiefs on the board. And we had initially thought we'd have the general citizenry elected like you do in a council when it was becoming, and you had all this administrative aspects to deal with in all the towns for buy-in. But now we're like into a needs assessment, and it's much more into expertise.
Right.
And so, and it's hard for sometimes the chiefs to make it a priority without also being, I think, at the table, being able to vote for decisions. So
Yep. So
that's my encouragement.
I get that, and I agree with you that it's changed somewhat where the authority is at now, in that it's talking about this particular project. Nonetheless, I think you're talking about people that would be voting to put potentially voting to put money articles on a ballot. And, that may or may not be consistent with what the city councils in those communities might want. It's just, I want to think that one through.
Okay, so, and in the meanwhile, we should be seeing if we can,
We should advertise.
We should
and see
advertise.
if we get people. In the meantime, we can talk about having
Yes.
staff people.
yeah, go ahead.
Just for the Public Safety Authority is meeting on the 19th to look at vendors. There were some really very substantial vendors. It's a hard decision which one to choose to do this telecommunication need assessment. And so we were offered some individuals, one from Barry, one from Montpelier. I hope that maybe Fred and Joe are there. And likewise, there's going to be a recommendation
Yes.
coming from your joint
Yeah,
committee.
Yes, there will be. The city, our city's proposed our preferred vendor, and Barry had some questions, so we're trying to work that out so that it's a single recommendation, and then the two staff people would be there to assist the committee and be liaisons with. They're not there to help make the choice. They're there to, once the choice is made, to work as liaisons with each department, with the contractor and with the authority.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so we're gonna probably revisit that one at a later point. Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. All right, what's your thought?
I'm not actually on the commission. I'm on their TAC, their
Right.
transportation group, and that's where I would prefer to
It's
be.
next one down.
Okay.
Yes, and not the commission.
But so then, do we need someone who's on the?
I think Marcella is actually our
Well,
rep.
we-
Marcella Dent.
Yeah, we used to have somebody from the planning commission,
Oh, that's right.
our planning commission, to be on the regional planning commission's
Isn't that-
commission.
Is that-
It's a good conduit of information.
Is Marcella on the planning committee? I think she is.
Marcella
I
is.
thi- I-
I know she's our rep. I had to go present to them one night, and she was there as Montpelier's
Yeah,
rep.
unless she's resigned.
No,
Yeah.
as far as I know, she's still the rep.
Okay. Is anyone else interested in serving on the Regional Planning Commission's Transportation Committee? Nope. Okay. And you're still willing to do that, Tom?
On the transportation, just not on their
Transportation,
commission. Yeah.
All right, Central Vermont Solid Waste Management District. Yeah.
So I've been the appointee. It turned out the meeting time just does not work for me, so I know that Donna had stepped up for now from staff and has a lot of expertise in this, but I don't.
And we-
Continuing it is challenging, like
Yeah.
even just because I know it's gonna be really hard for me to make any meetings, so if she's unavailable or if it turns out that's too much burden for her, which we were concerned about, I would be great if somebody else is interested. I mean, if nobody is, I could.
And I would say that we advertised pretty extensively for public participation in this and got no applicants.
So do we need, if we have Donna serving on this, then do we need a council?
No, we just, it doesn't ever have to be a council. We've had non-council
Right.
members.
Okay.
What's typically been the case actually is we've had a council member be the alternate, and the resident, remember Mia Moore was our resident for a long time, and then we had Ellen Cheney was our rep for a long time. And then, so, we have
Was
not
any-
had a staff person, although Donna is uniquely
Is there any
qualified.
council member interested in serving on that board?
When are the meetings?
It's like Tuesday nights at 7 or something.
Right. And I think, aren't they usually up at the Central Vermont Chamber of Commerce? Yeah.
Any thoughts on that? No? Okay. All right, so I think we can probably leave that one as it is then. The Community Justice Center's Citizen Advisory Board. Connor, you have been the,
I'm okay staying on. I'm happy to step down to somebody else.
okay. Anybody interested? Nope. So you're okay to stay
I'm
on there?
okay.
Oh, okay, great. City Hall Art Committee. I I feel a little badly that we have not met.
Pictures.
So to be fair, it's a new council session, which
Yeah.
which means that it's time to
Change.
the art. That's very exciting. Well, really, what this committee consists of is like just checking in about like, is this art gonna be okay for this room? And, I mean, we have talked about like
We had grander ideas, Anne.
That's true, we did.
And you have some time off because you have an intern at school.
It's true, I
So
do.
maybe we could try to do something.
Yeah, that's fair. Ironically, I'm probably gonna step down from this, even though I sort of helped start this.
Well, for the other council members who weren't around here, at least from my perspective, I would really like to make it so when you walk into City Hall, it's appealing. And that you're not faced immediately, one, with that bell. And I think the bell should be over here with all the ship pictures it belongs to and relates to. But I also don't want to, all these faces of old former mayors who just happen all to be men. But I just don't feel that's enticing
true.
or exciting. So I would love to dress up City Hall.
Sally Rice is out
Yeah.
there.
Oh,
Anybody,
there's
help
one,
me.
There's one woman there now.
And Mary.
Well, but she's over here.
still
No,
here.
not in the hall. We're
She's
talking
behind.
about, go in the hallway.
Yeah.
I think the woman's on this side, not that side.
Yeah. Anyone else interested in working on that? All right.
I'll help.
Super.
Oh,
Cool.
great.
I will leave it to you.
I can help too.
Okay, awesome. Yes. Great.
Working in the arts, I can, lots of connections.
Super. I'll leave it to you three to.
So it's
Work
Jay, Donna, and Cameron is the committee?
And I
Jack,
can.
didn't Jack say? No,
I
you
did.
didn't?
I didn't.
Okay.
I can.
I'm sorry to throw out my hand, but that's
Okay,
okay.
there's
I don't- I
somebody
don't
over
wanna-
there did.
You have to have an odd number of people to break the ties.
Well, you could have 3 council members and Cameron could be the staff person.
Oh, yeah, and
That's
a
true.
staff support
Yeah.
helping.
There you go.
Okay,
You may be.
Are
alright,
you?
so
You're,
you're in?
You're on.
Yeah,
you're
I'll
into it.
I'll help out.
So I will email you the contact that I have for the TW Wood Gallery that helps us select art. Okay. Great. All right. So the Energy Advisory Committee. Lauren, you have served on that.
Yeah, I'd love to stay on it.
Okay.
I mean, if someone else is eager, but
I will probably continue to go, regardless. Apparently, I'm not a voting member. I don't know if you are.
I feel like we had that discussion once
Yeah.
robustly and had some very different opinions on.
Yeah. Whatever.
Do you
That's-
vote that much?
Yeah. Yeah. They vote on. I mean, they approve minutes and they.
I know, but more consensus than voting, or? I just asked, some groups you just talk about things and share, and you come to an agreement versus voting.
Yeah. No, we vote on stuff.
Okay.
Doesn't advisory suggest that it would be more discussion than action?
Yes, you
Well,
would
they
think.
advise the council. They can still take an action to recommend something to the council.
Yep. But it doesn't. Anyway, if anyone else is interested, you're certainly welcome.
So leave it as is.
Nope. Okay.
All right.
All right. All right. The Harry Sheridan Scholarship. I've been that person. I'm happy to keep being that person, unless anybody else wants to.
You probably are uniquely qualified.
I am uniquely qualified.
So this is a scholarship for a high school student. So.
Yep, and some of the money goes to Montpelier High School students, and some goes to U32.
Right.
Yep.
So having someone who's at the high school would probably be.
It does
good-
help.
Good take.
I know at least half the candidates.
So, so in other words, taking science is a good.
Well, no, it's Montpelier. You know everybody.
I know.
Okay, so all right, housing task force. That has been Jack. Thoughts?
Want to stay?
Okay, anybody else? Because I suppose any of these that have only one could take up to 2 more, if you wanted to. Also serve.
Assuming the committee has room for them.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay. Thank you, Jack. Awesome.
Well, and the housing task force is possibly unique among these committees that, in that it's a self-selected group. People are not, other members of the task force are not appointed by the council, so anyone can come.
Yeah. Okay.
In fact, if you make the mistake of showing up for 2 meetings in a row, you're kind of stuck being on.
I didn't realize that all this time. I didn't realize that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the Housing Trust Fund Board.
I'm also willing to stay on that. It tends to meet like once a year, and make recommendations for the city council for what to do to allocate the money that's raised by the Housing Trust Fund item in the budget.
Anyone else interested in that? Okay, great. All right, the investment committee. Connor, you had been on that.
Happy to stay, happy to go. I'm starting to figure out what those pie charts mean, but they hit out, so.
Anyone else? No? Okay. All right, and the Montpelier Live Board.
I think I should step off this one. They meet pretty frequently, a Tuesday every month there, and it just doesn't work out for the schedule too well. I think they need better representation.
Anyone particularly interested in that one?
I'd be willing to step into that role.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anyone else? Okay, great. Super, thanks. Okay, so with the Montpelier Foundation, what's the story there?
You know, I meant to check on this. They did reform their board, and we approved their bylaws, but there were some mayoral appointments, as I recall.
Maybe we should come back to
Let's
this
check
one.
on that one.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right, Social and Economic Justice Committee.
I have been serving on it. I'm happy to continue. We're kind of in the middle of a process that started in the last few months, so happy to see it through. Would love other folks to participate if interested, but.
Anyone else?
But yeah, you should stay.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, Lauren. Okay, the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. We've had 3 people on it. How are you all thinking about
Now,
that?
wait a minute here, Connor.
I didn't know I was on it.
Glenn had been on it, and he resigned.
Because he had
A long time ago.
almost immediately, because
Yeah.
he realized it was a
So
conflicting
it's
schedule.
only been the 2 of us.
Okay.
And I think I'm interested in continuing.
Okay.
Was I appointed to it last time?
Nope.
No,
Oh, okay, yeah.
that's just a mistake.
Name Creep Beach, just.
So, Donna, you're interested in continuing.
I
am. Jack, what's your thought?
I'll stay on it too. I think having some continuity makes sense in this group.
And we could have a third. We don't have to have a third. Any thoughts? No? Okay. All right. And the TW Wood Board. No, so I technically am a member of the board, but it's often like the mayor's designee. So because it's really a part of their bylaws or forming documents that cites that they have the mayor or the mayor's designee on their board. I used to go regularly, but I have not gone in the last year. So
Glenn was really active.
yes, Glenn, and I think he's going to continue,
Yeah.
which is great. But
He
so
could be your designee.
he could be, unless anyone else is interested in representing the council.
Well, let me just ask, and what is the relationship between the TW Wood and the council? Is it essentially a fund overseeing so that, we have a voice in how they spend their money, or is it just because it's a community board and they like city councilors?
Do you have more
I
information?
don't know the full nitty-gritty. I've never really looked into it that closely. But the TW Wood collection was actually left to the city.
Right.
And so then the city, I think at some point, formed this board as an independent board of trustees to curate and maintain and keep the collection and alive and display it. And so as part of that being formed, the mayor of Montpelier was named as a permanent member of that board.
It's not a fund per se of the city.
Correct.
Right.
We give them a little bit of money every year in the budget, but
And then they independently
correct.
Yep.
manage
And-
it along with other resources that they grants or
Right, and
gifts.
I think because of that relationship, we do get art from them, that sort of thing. But otherwise, I don't think it's a very strong connection.
Okay.
Was that interest or not so much?
Well, and if Jay looked like he was perhaps interested, I don't want to step on your feet. You sure? Okay.
Thanks for asking.
You're welcome. I'll be happy.
Okay, great. Excellent. Okay, so I think that wraps that up. And
We do have
Excuse
one
me,
more.
we're missing some.
Uh-oh, we're missing some.
Well, so I know there was at least one that isn't on here. The homelessness task force. Glenn was on there.
Oh, that's right.
Parks Commission's not on there, the water rate's not on there.
So the Parks Commission is its own elected.
Right, but I was appointed a rep to court to
Oh,
collaborate with them,
right.
and I'm attending anyways, but we did
Yeah,
do
that's
an
so that we
official.
didn't catch that. I think because it was a formal. It wasn't a formal built-in thing, but it was something they'd asked. So yes, I forgot. I'll put that one on
So we
there.
can add it to the list for next
And
time.
in the same sort of vein of trying to have just a regular conversation with the Park Commission, I also thought we were going to try to do something with the Recreation Board, because when you go visiting, at least it was apparent to me that we didn't have any real clear communication, and we sort of needed that. So that would be another one I would add, whether we do it tonight or not. I just think it would be good.
And then you also raised the Water and Sewer Rate Committee. That had been listed by name for a long. I actually took that off the list
Okay.
because it hadn't met for so long, and at this point, we're not sure we need it. At one point, we had spent a lot of time on a major overhaul of water rates that never really rate structure, and it never went forward. I think if we needed such a group, we'd come to the board and ask at that time, but I don't think we need to appoint people for board. It hasn't met in at least 3 years that I'm aware of, if not longer. So.
Okay.
Otherwise, all the water and sewer rates come to you for approval, the group. So.
So are we missing anything else that you can think of?
Parks Commission was the one that I was most vested in, and the Recreation Board. I think we need to have
A liaison.
solid
Yeah.
communication going there.
So we can revisit that when we, there were a couple others that we're going to revisit anyway, so that could be good.
Yeah.
Anything else you can?
Well,
think
the
of?
homelessness task
Oh,
force, because
homelessness
Glenn
task
was our rep, and they meet pretty regularly.
Still doing it weekly?
Yeah,
And during the day.
Well, so, is anyone interested in that? So, Cameron, you're attending those meetings.
Yes.
So I actually feel like we have, someone who's there all the time who can report back to us as to how it's going. So having, staff representation there, I think is probably fine.
So I think staff representation is great in terms of putting forth the policy of the city or helping them get stuff done. It's different than having someone who might be vocally offering opinions on what policy
do.
should be happening and that kind of thing. So, you would be losing that voice on this committee. She's not going to get out in front with them saying, here's what we can do. Unless you all direct her to take a certain, or direct me to direct her to take a certain position, so.
How long are the meetings?
Right now, it's 11:30 to 1 every Wednesday. There is conversation about revisiting scheduling, but they haven't taken up that conversation yet. So right now, it's every Wednesday, 11:30 to 1.
I don't know that, especially weekly is
Yeah.
going to be realistic for, certainly for my life.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
middays really, sorry.
Yeah, no.
I get used to raising my hand. I apologize. It's funny because I was actually thinking about trying it out today just to see if I could, in looking at these committees, and it's just not possible for me most Wednesdays because of work schedules. But I'm wondering, I actually called Ken to say, can we meet? Because I'd like to hear more about the committee. And, if we do things like that and make an effort to do that, then I think we have that same effect. And if we drop into meetings as opposed to constantly being there on that committee, then I think we give it the attention that it needs. And it's certainly an issue that keeps coming up and that, there are strong emotions around it. So it's not as if, it's not like the TW Wood board that might drift to the side and not be in people's focus on a daily basis. So I think in some ways we can, if we're we can revisit it if this doesn't work, but I'm not as worried if we don't find one person who is the permanent city councilor on that board for every single meeting.
Oh, Lauren.
Just curious, Cameron is the one who's been going, I mean, to Bill's point of having like a different kind of voice, do you feel like it would be particularly helpful? I mean, it just seems like schedule-wise, it's really tough for any of us to do it, but do you feel like it would be really valuable to have one of us, and therefore maybe pursuing rescheduling, or seeing if someone could go to some of the meetings at least, or, I don't know, just be curious what your, since you've been the one attending it, like, is this solution we're coming up with seem okay for now, or probably?
As far as my role on the committee, I help them schedule, I help them take notes, I help them post their agendas, and I help them guide their conversations to make sure they're hitting their goals. So I'm not telling them how they should be allocating their time or what their goals really should be. So I have an insight on y'all because I work with you closely, so I can say what I might think you guys would want to see from them, but that's a very hard position for me to take as staff. I want to support them in what they want to do and what their goals are. So Glenn was very helpful to prioritize things that they wanted to do and help them prioritize how to address issues that they've identified and what he thought would be the most politically sound way to get things done. And that's a role that I can't really take for this committee because it needs to be led by the committee chair. So on one hand, whatever is agreeable with y'all's schedule is best. They have had conversations about rescheduling it. It just hasn't happened yet. Some of the members, we do have some vacancies on that committee, so that scheduling might need to change anyway when we get new folks on there. So honestly, that might be a reason why we're not being able to get folks to get to the committee, because it is in the middle of the day. So that is a lot of things that we're taking into consideration.
Donna.
Well, I can, not as an appointee, but I will try to make the next couple of months and just see, but more than that, I couldn't attend.
I'll do the same. I mean,
Okay.
yeah,
Maybe we can alternate,
yeah.
really.
Okay, well, and I do think if the committee wants to have more permanent appointment from the council, which like that, I think that's gonna be a pretty important, the schedule is gonna be a pretty important piece.
And that's something I can bring back to them and
Right.
say, the council says.
Yeah, we didn't appoint anyone.
Right.
Mostly because of this.
So thank you.
Okay, great, thank you so much. Okay,
So just
yes.
I was just thinking about Donna's comments about parks, a liaison to the parks board or the rec board. I mean, I don't know why you couldn't appoint those. I mean, you're just basically saying, here's someone who's gonna agree to go to their meetings, and they're not actually members of that board. You're just saying, we're sending a delegate to the meeting to keep good communication, so, because I don't know why we would need to put that off.
Sure.
I'd definitely like to be the liaison for the park commission.
And you said rec too, right?
No.
I wrote that down.
Erase it, Bill.
Anyone interested in being, actually, anyone else interested in being the rep to the Parks Commission? Okay. Anyone interested in being the representative to the,
Rec board.
Rec board? Yeah.
Come on, you got a new building coming, come on.
Do we know how
Should
often
have someone
they
on the
meet?
senior center board too.
That's right, we could. Do we know how often the rec board meets?
I'm pulling that up.
Okay.
Hold on, just a second.
I wanna say monthly.
Yeah, it's on Mondays in the evening.
Depending on how often they meet, I might actually have some interest in that. You know, because I'm not doing enough.
I'd be happy to help out as well.
Oh, okay, well, if you're up for it.
But no, but
Great.
that schedule is not sustainable, so I'm not sure, monthly, if that's how often they meet. I don't
It's
know.
5:30 the second Monday of each month.
That-
5:30.
That's our Main Street Middle School Building Committee.
Exactly.
And that actually runs into our meeting Monday. Well, we could, well, yeah. Anybody else
It was
interested?
an idea.
What's that?
It was just an idea.
Well, I may try to show up to those. if I can.
Yeah, I mean, we've never had a formal designee, so maybe we just don't do that and see how it goes. And if they need one, they could ask for one too.
Yep.
I know Parks really wanted someone attending, so. Okay, we'll
Okay.
take that off the list then.
Okay. All right, so I think we're ready to move on. So we have some appointments to make. The first one is to the Social and Economic Justice Advisory Committee. So there were 4 vacancies, and we had one application from Marion Kahn. And by the way, are you waiting for anything in particular? Conservation. Let's do that one first. Yeah. Sorry about that.
We thought you were just a really dedicated person.
Okay, so for the conservation.
Would you like to be on the homelessness task force?
Yeah.
Rec board.
Okay, so we had one vacancy for an alternate seat, and we have an application from Marion Waltz. Is that you? Great. Well, would you like to just come and introduce yourself?
Good evening. I'm Marion Walls. I live on St. Paul Street. I don't know if you care about where I live. I'm interested in serving with the Conservation Commission. I work day-to-day as an emergency management professional with the state, so good job on your statement at the beginning. I work a lot with state agencies on impacts from natural and human-caused disasters, and I'm interested in working with the Conservation Commission on how we look more broadly at climate change and how we conserve land to save on our impacts to our city infrastructure. So that's my interest.
Great.
And I like being outside, so that's great.
All right, do we have, or any questions?
I'll make a motion to appoint Ms. Waltz to the Conservation Commission.
I'll second it.
Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Needn't sit so quiet next to
Yeah. Sorry, it took so long.
By the way, just first of all, congratulations and thank you. I just got a message from Morgan Brown, who wanted to tell me that the task force had previously agreed to meet weekly until the overflow shelter closes. Then we'll probably meet every other week.
Oh, okay.
And
That's helpful.
and also said that today they chose to meet by phone rather than in person out of an abundance of caution. So therefore, people could consider calling in if that changes anybody's mind.
Okay. Okay, well, to be revisited probably later.
Yep. Just wanted to make sure that
Okay.
was.
All right, so back to, that was the first one, conservation. So the next one is the Development Review Board. So for this, we have 2 vacant seats, and we had just one applicant, Joseph Kiernan, who is not here. Is there a motion? Yeah.
I move that we appoint Joseph Ryan Kiernan to the Development Review Board.
Second.
Okay, further discussion?
Just a clarification, we're appointing him to the full position, not the vacant alternate position, is my understanding.
I think.
That was
is
what I meant by my motion.
Okay, yeah, no, I just wanted to be
Okay.
clear.
Great. So there's a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thanks, Joseph. And Historic Preservation. So for that, we had one vacant seat, and we have one applicant who's Brian Powell, also not here. Is there a motion?
I move that we appoint Brian Powell to the Historic Preservation Commission.
I'll second it.
Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are skipping the Homelessness Task Force appointment, and so now we're on to Social and Economic Justice. For that, there were 4 vacancies, and we received one application from Miriam Kahn, and so, who is not here. Is there a motion?
I'll move to appoint Marianne Cohn to the full seat on the Social and Economic Justice Committee.
Second. Sorry.
Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and we are skipping the downtown master plan. And then, so now we are up to talking about the schedule for strategic planning. So for this, I am going to turn things over either to Bill or Cameron.
Well, Cameron's going to do the heavy lifting, but I'll start. We, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we have two sessions we'd like, well, probably three sessions we'd like to schedule. One for our own workshop as far as how we operate. Love to do that as soon as we can, like even next week. The second would be our strategic planning, which I think will be a 2-night operation, and we're recommending, I think it was the 28th and 9th of April. That's a 5th week in April that we don't have a normal council meeting. So it would be, we would have a 2-week break in between meetings, and I will let Cameron describe more what she's thinking about. Is for the council alumni know we've used a consultant the last 2 years, and that's been, I think, successful. But one of the strengths that Cameron brought to us from North Carolina was strategic planning. And so I asked her to take a crack at it this year, and she's done a lot of work at putting together a plan, building off of the work we've done in prior years.
Thanks, Bill. So I won't go through what I want the procedure to be tonight, but I will share what we have been doing. So I've asked our staff to come up with key initiatives for each of their departments, showing us how that relates to the already established goals that the council has come up with and voted for in the past. It's the things that we tie our budget to, et cetera. So we really wanted to show that the things that we are currently doing align with those goals and are strategic and get us to an end point. So we've sort of worked as staff to outline those, and then we'll show those to you sort of as a continuum of here are all the things that we're currently doing to support your goals and move those goals forward. And then what we'll do as a group is talk about things that you want to add to that. What are y'all's priorities, and how do you want to add to what the staff is already doing to further those goals? So it will be a great collaborative, a great time to have conversation. Do you see things on there that you don't like or you don't want to see as priorities, and how do you want to move those around? And if you have anything additional, how do we add that to what is already happening inside of our departments? Some of the feedback that past consultants have got from staff and councils, they felt like there was a disconnect where council had really great ideas and staff wanted to get them done, but maybe didn't have the capacity or didn't know how it fit within the continuum of the work that they were already doing. And so we had really brainstormed a way to bring us together to understand what staff is doing and how we can help council further its, y'all's initiatives and what you want to do. So in the next few weeks, I'll be wrapping up all of that work with my staff. I'll be getting that together in a sort of easy to understand and digest packet for you guys to review, so you have it before this meeting that we're proposing, so that you'll be able to look at what we've put out there as our key initiatives for each department, and then start brainstorming what you would like to see in there as well, so that it can sort of be a good conversation that you are well informed and ready for.
We haven't finalized, as she said, the actual process, but one of the things we're thinking about or envisioning is that the first night would be to go through the initiatives that the staff has created, and they would be present to explain them, and also for the council to make your pitches for what you'd like on the list. One of the pieces feedback we've gotten in the past, and even from some of you individually, is that people would list something, it would have it like a name, and it would go up on the board on a sticky, but no one really knew exactly what that meant. Like what was that one sentence, what phrase, and especially when we group them together. So it'd almost be like time for someone to make their pitch for a proposal, like, I'd like to see this, and this is what it means. And then maybe there's a conversation with staff, well, what would that look like, what kind of work would be involved? And that would really be the first night, just fleshing out the list of all that things and maybe putting a little definition to it. Everyone goes home, sleeps on it, and then the second night would be, okay, now we've got the universe of things, now we'll start prioritizing and, picking the top choices and those kinds of things, so that then that really is, of course, the council's role there, but obviously the staff would be there to provide whatever expertise we could. And as for those of you, again, that are new, we really do rely on these a lot. They make a big difference in terms of not only decisions we make in-house, But some of them are just simply, we want to report on something, so you get the report, and we try to set a schedule. But it really sets our council agendas then. We take all those lists, and we figure out which ones need council action, and we try to at least do a tentative schedule for the whole year based on those council priorities. And so, it's not to say other things can't come up and you can't add new things, but that really drives the priority work for the year. So it's an important thing to do right. And I think we've gotten a little bit better at it each year, and I think this year will be best of all.
Thanks.
Connor,
No
and then
pressure.
Donna, did you have something?
Yep, so you're looking for us to come into this sort of with our own, like, individual, like, list of proposals there? Like Bill said, we're gonna make the pitch on it? Or do you hope for that to kind of happen organically while we're there?
Either.
Both?
I've got a lot of weird ideas to come with.
Weird ideas are great ideas.
You might want to screen those first.
I think the outcome would be y'all vote on which are, the priorities. I mean, you can have any idea you want, you just have to make us believe it, right?
Well, and I think
Y'all voted for the scooters.
and I think the key thing is to understand not only what the idea is, but what is necessary to make that idea fly. I think that's where we've fallen down the last couple of years, and years before then too. We were let's work on whatever, and we've never really said, but what are we actually committing to do that? And so, I think it would be good to put some more meat on that bones, even maybe after we get the list, and to say, okay, what do we mean by, we're going to support downtown. But what does that look like? What specifically are we going to do? What kind of effort are you expecting? Does that just mean we're going to give money to Montpelier Alive at budget time? Great, that's all the work necessary. Or does that mean, what does it mean? So.
And sorry, Cameron, did you have anything more on that?
No, he said it well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Donna.
So my question may be degree, because when 2 years was the first time that the same firm came, and I thought every year we got less disconnected and more in sync with the department heads and having our goals down to, can we do this with the staff we have? So maybe it's just amount of degree. I hope it's not the same disconnect that we started with.
Right.
No,
No.
I think that was the
Okay.
feedback I was getting, and I want to improve that. I want to
Yeah,
find ways
okay.
that we can only go up from
Yeah.
where we are, it's only improvement.
Okay. And my other question was, could we do a Wednesday, Thursday? People look at their schedule?
It's a potential issue for me to do it that Wednesday and
Okay.
Thursday.
Oh, Wednesday is bad too for you?
No, the Thursday is the
Okay.
potential problem for me.
Okay.
I may be out of town that night.
Well, I think we should probably look at our schedules then. Are we at that point? So I know, Bill, you had mentioned 2 sessions, one where we're sort of gathering ideas and pitching, and then the other one being
Brass
voting.
tacks,
But,
if you will.
I also want to just come back to a conversation that we'd had before about talking about our norms. We're thinking
Yes, so
about
that would be I'd like to do that as soon as we can. Like, we're talking this strategic planning by end of April. I'd love to do like the norms thing, like even next week if we could. It's a
And-
completely separate.
Do you imagine the norms conversation as being a separate night or built into a council meeting?
My preference and suggestion would be that it be a separate night, just because the vibe is different. And while I don't think it'll take all night, I think it's still, we sit in a place, we can sit around a table. It's, we put the things up. It's just it's a workshop, different feel to
Yeah.
it. But I said I don't think it needs to be a 5-hour meeting unless we're just enjoying ourselves so much.
Well, so if we, I just want to, as long as we're looking at our calendars, I feel
Yes.
like we should probably
Right.
aim to do all 3 of those. But let's start with the strategic plan stuff since we started there. So the next.
So we tossed that date out for a couple of reasons. One, school vacation week is the week before that, and there are some people with school-age kids, assuming people can take vacation. And so we could potentially move our council meeting from the 22nd up to the 15th. We have a meeting already on the 8th. And then the 1st was just getting it a little too close, and actually Cameron and I are going to be at a meeting on the 1st, so we presumably, so we won't be here. And that week of the 29th was a 5th week. It's just that rare, happens a couple times a year where you have a fifth Wednesday. So we just picked the 28th and 9th. They don't have to be consecutive nights. They don't have to be even the same week. We could do one week and one the next week. And we were just trying to kind of do it while people's brains were thinking.
How does the 28th and 29th work?
No, I can adjust. I just,
Okay.
30.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm seeing thumbs up from pretty much everybody, so that is great. Shall we start that at 6:30 as per regular council time, or do you want?
We've actually started those a little bit early sometimes. We provided food. If that people still want to do that, that makes it a little more comfortable and less
How
formal.
early?
I think that's a good idea.
5:30, 6?
5:30?
5:30 is fine with me.
5:30? Yeah, a couple of people had trouble with earlier starts, but I don't know if this group has that. I know Ashley and Rosie both had early start problems, but.
Okay,
Great.
5:30.
And we'll find a location. We've done it in the police room, but that's technically closed right now, so we'll find a location.
Just
Okay.
from a public meeting point of view.
Oh,
still
so to be
warned.
clear with Stephen here, we warn these as, they're open public meetings, anyone can attend, but they're in workshop format. They're not, necessarily, we're not voting particularly. You usually bring the plan back and vote on it in a public meeting. But yes, they're warned and held. And we even had, a couple years ago, we had a council workshop a couple nights at the Capitol Plaza in their conference room, but we still warned it and it was open. So we obviously we like to use public buildings if we can. They have to be accessible, so we'll find places. But yeah, absolutely. This isn't a clandestine.
Right, well, or in executive session kind
Right.
of thing.
No, and there's not really anything about this that's executive session.
Right.
So.
Shall we also try to schedule the norm setting session? So if we could aim for next week, the 18th, or I guess we have a regular council meeting on the 25th. Could also potentially go April 1st. I'm open to suggestions.
Or a night other than Wednesday.
Or a night other than Wednesday. Whatever works.
Next week work?
18th?
How's the 18th?
18th works.
Yeah.
Connor too?
Yeah.
Okay, Jack.
Time?
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
I imagine 6:30 would probably be sufficient.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
And no food.
Yeah, definitely we should meet at 5:30 then. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Okay. Great. Is
And
there
we
anything?
We
yeah.
can do that one in here. We could just do it around the table.
Do we want to talk at all about the possibility of, we have a regularly scheduled meeting on April 22nd.
Yes.
But since we're looking at our calendars right now, do folks feel like keeping that day, or would you prefer to move it? It makes no difference to me.
Well, as of now, I'm scheduled to be out of the country that week.
Okay.
As of now, very tentative. We'll see what happens with those travel plans. So, but if the rest, the council is amenable to move it forward a week because of, conflicts with vacations, then that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm the same. We were tentatively thinking of traveling. We would be in the country, but we were going to visit one of our kids in college, and they may not be there. So one of them already, we just learned today, is not coming back from spring break, and the other is still undecided. So they're sending them all home. So I don't know, but if it was the 15th, it would be no potential conflict.
Does the 15th work for folks?
So we'd meet the 8th and 15th for regular business meetings and the 28th and 9th for the strategic planning.
That's
Great,
okay?
that's wonderful.
My granddaughter's school vacation is opposite of Montpelier's. It's that week, but that's okay.
You can bring her to the council meeting.
Oh, yeah. There've been several meetings already. Many meetings.
Okay.
Just want to make
That's
sure I'm
a
putting this.
shorter meeting. That's our regular council meeting you're
Right.
moving.
It's just
Right.
moving it from the 22nd to the 15th.
Right.
I would be remiss to say if I wasn't very excited to do this, and I appreciate the opportunity to lead us through strategic planning. I am very excited about that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, awesome.
just thank you.
We're excited about having you do it.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
you threw your paces.
Yeah.
And
Gotta earn my keep.
and she strategically planned it for just 2 weeks after her 6-month probation ends. So if it doesn't work out, she's still here.
Thanks, Phil, it's very nice.
Always thinking of you.
Okay, so that is the end. Oh, yes, Lauren.
Just wondering, and I don't know if this like makes sense at this moment, just knowing like to what we were just talking about, how quickly a lot of things are closing down and stuff, like, is it worth tonight when we're not in the throes, and it's a pretty short agenda of talking about if we get to a point where public meetings are not encouraged, if we could set up an alternate protocol of calling in, or what are we gonna do in the event that it doesn't make sense to have an in-person meeting sometime in the next month or so?
That's an interesting question. I mean, it's so acknowledging that it's hard to know what the advice will be, potentially, because at least right now, I think any time that we have a public meeting, even if it's understood that it's just a phone meeting, you still have to have a location that people could show up to. And so if that were not, if we were encouraged to not show up, would we still make the space available?
So
I don't know.
I think we have started talking about that, and in fact, the homeless task force today met by phone in this room. So Cameron was here with the phone. Everyone else was on the phone, and there was only one resident here in person for that meeting. We always, it's a conference line. We publish the call-in line, so members of the public can also call in. Depending on, I don't know what the circumstances would be, whether we could even do, well, I guess if we're not here, the other choice would be we could have the meeting, but we just put it out to video with call-in or something, and not have an audience here. I mean, obviously we have to follow the open meeting law, but I think a worst case scenario, we just have a situation where you all could call in, anyone else could call in and listen.
How dreadful.
Well, and
Yeah.
I could also picture too that maybe we're not going through the regular, business that's not urgent.
Right.
We'd still do
Right.
liquor licenses or whatever was
Right.
needed to happen.
Contract
whatever-
approvals
Yeah,
and those
that
kind of boom, 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 right. Yeah, we wouldn't have long presentations and policy discussions and those kinds of things. I think we'd just have to, that would probably mess up our strategic plan a little bit, but.
Yeah, but it's good to talk about it ahead of time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other thoughts? Go ahead.
Well, there's a great quote from Nancy Pelosi a day ago, and she said, "We are the captains of the ship. We are the last to leave." And while I don't think we're congressional level, I think this is a serious obligation, and paying the bills of the city, making sure that the finances run forward, being here is an important thing, and I would be loath to cancel this. Anything short of very clear, direct public health requirements that it's unsafe. I mean, I think this is an important function of how society at these points in time, need to continue to function. This is not a vacation or a fun conference. This is the work of government and keeping the city functioning.
It occurs to me too that, thank you, making me, think about how people participate. And even if we're here, there may be other folks who don't feel comfortable coming here, even if we are. And so it makes me think about just other mechanisms for people to be able to participate. I mean, I could picture, it would probably not really work for members of the public to call in to this meeting, because how would we recognize them and say, okay, please, what do you have to say? Like, how would you signal that? But if there was, I know it would not be accessible to everyone, but if there was an online way for people to ask a question or participate or make a comment, that sort of thing, and then we can do that in an orderly fashion. Just more mechanisms is a good thing. Jack.
This is something that I would expect there'll be some guidance coming from the Secretary of State.
We have in the past, had a call-in provision, and we used to do this for years during the budget public hearings. And it just got so that nobody was coming and nobody was calling, so we stopped doing it. But we actually would have someone answering a phone here, and people would have to give their name and address and their question or comment, and then it would be brought up and then read. Just, that was the technology that we had at the time, but it also identified who the person was, and then we would try to answer it by public. And people did have to give their name, just like you would if you were here. And we had, I think, a volunteer or someone we paid, gave a gift card or something to come in and answer phones. And then I know Bev Hill did it for a while when she was on staff. And, so that might be something we could consider, having a call-in number where people are relaying their comments.
Yeah.
It's tough to have a dialogue. I mean, it's not the same, but it's at least.
Yeah. I'm speaking for myself here, but I would be interested in looking into that, especially considering that there, even if there's not advice from above saying, hey, people should stay home, but if someone is self-quarantining, like how can people participate if they're in self-quarantine? So just making it accessible to that population. Yeah.
Along that point, I mean, I think there's a number of free apps like Zoom that, we may want to look into, just because I think you can control on some of them. I don't know if Zoom is one of them, but I know that our GoToMeeting or such.
Sure.
That do have the ability to control who's speaking. And if it was even tied in with the projector,
We can just project them.
Yeah, we can just project larger than life public participation. But I think I would support that as well, as just looking into that, knowing that would come with its own set of hiccups and needs. But I think it would be great if on the other side, if we come, but not forcing other people to come, especially if they're in a vulnerable population segment.
Yeah. Great, thanks for raising that.
We'll get on that.
Cool. All right, any further comments about any of this? All right, so that is the end of our regular business for tonight's meeting. So now we have council reports, and so Jay, just so you're aware as to what this section of the meeting is, it's a time for councilors we go around and you sort of get a platform to, on one hand, you can say anything you want, but a little more specific guidance there would be that if you're on a committee, you have any updates from that committee that the council should know about, that's a good time to review that. If there are any events that have happened in the city or that are coming up that you want people to be aware of, that's also, pretty common. So.
It's also a time you could float an idea for a future agenda. Sometimes either make a specific request, as I think I told you and Dan, any single council member can request an item on the agenda. Sometimes people, I wouldn't want to let the political people in the room speak, but I think sometimes there's also a little bit of a trial balloon. Like, I'm thinking of putting this on the agenda, and you get a sense of whether there's going to be support for it or to take it any further or not. So it's those kinds of things.
Okay. Donna, how do you feel about starting? Okay.
So, mentioning parks, Parks Commission has actually added, they meet monthly, but they've added a second meeting for the last 3-4 months to work on their green print. And their green print is like their big master plan. And it is on the website if you want to read it. They've been spending a lot of time on it, and I think ultimately it will really help define the vision for the parks citywide that will be really good to keep working towards as we expand our parks. The Montpelier Transportation Infrastructure Committee met. Jack was there, and they're working with Mike and the Planning Commission, dealing with all the aspiration goals that the Planning Commission wants from all the committees, and you're probably on committees that are also working on these. And it's a lot of wordsmithing. A lot of patience is required. And I just want to thank voters for voting me in office, both as a council and for my at-large position on the Public Safety Authority. Thank you.
All right, and I just bring up, Don and I said it on the Micro Transit Committee today. This is a new committee, more city-focused. We had previously been on the state one. I think I was encouraged to hear that it is a green light. You know, we're still waiting to bring down some federal dollars, hopefully. But regardless, the GMT money that's currently in the state budget is going to be reallocated to microtransit. I think they need $200,000 more, but they are going to find it. And it's pretty exciting. It was a good group of stakeholders around the room. I think we should probably have the state come in and give an update on this pretty soon, because it is going to move quick once you get it going. And I think you'll probably have a lot of constituents who have questions about it, particularly are the current services going to be in place? Will I be able to get where I'm going there? And I think it is going to be improved, and they are keeping an eye towards that. So stay tuned. Otherwise, big congratulations to the lads from Montpelier High School on coming so close to the state championship last weekend. They did a tremendous year there. And also, thanks to voters for giving me another round as well. And congratulations, everybody else. Thanks.
Well, I don't have much to report. The committee started in probably about 15 minutes. I'll play next time. But other than to say thank you to the voters, congratulations to all of you, and I'm excited to be here and to work with all of you. That's it.
So I want to report on a committee that Jay and Jack and I are on, which is the Main Street Middle School Building Committee. It's actually a subcommittee of the Montpelier Roxbury Public School Board. We've been meeting since October. We met this week, and we will be actually doing a public presentation next month at the school board meeting on April 15th. The committee's been charged with really assessing some of the needs as well as the facilities there at the Main Street School. It is one of the older high school. It is the oldest school building, but it's also city-owned. I mean, all of the school buildings are owned by the city. And it's really important to discuss some of the future, some of the potential, some of the needs, and we'll be doing some of our initial findings for that. So if anybody has an interest in that school, I would certainly encourage them to watch or attend the April 15th meeting.
Dan, before you get onto that, I guess I'd ask, I'll take a look at this too, but you might want to ask the committee to look into this with the school. I think there may, when the charter was changed and created the new district, the school may have taken ownership of those buildings.
I'm only going because I was looking at this. The only reason I mentioned that was because I looked at this map last night.
Right.
It's still listed as
It's-
city-owned property.
right, it's publicly owned property.
I wasn't necessarily intending to make a
Well,
sort of title opinion.
No, but up until recently, it always was. The reason I make that distinction is, up until recently, the city was the underlying owner of all those buildings. And as we saw at 58 Berry Street, which had been the offices for the rec building and the school administrative offices, when they just walked away, when they moved out, they were just like, it's the city's problem now.
Right.
And so we were the ones that ended up having to renovate it and do all the things. So I think for years, the future of the middle school has always been, well, the city has a stake because we might be left with it. And
Right.
I don't know if that may still be the case. I'm just not 100% sure. So I raised that. If one of the strategies is we're just going to dump it on the city, I'd make sure that they know that might not be the case.
And I can say that is not one of the strategies that's being discussed, to be very clear
And I
about
wasn't
that.
trying to suggest it was.
Could you give that date again? I thought you said the
Sorry,
15th.
April 15th.
That's
Oh, we have a council
Is that-
meeting that
it's a
night.
we just
Wednesday.
screw
We
up
just made our
by-
council meeting that night.
Did I screw up the date?
I don't,
It
Date and
That's
time.
correct, because
Yeah.
they're alternating Wednesdays, so. yeah.
Right. So we may not be there because of the council, but I know that there are other, it's not just simply a city council board, there are a number of members, and so they would be there.
Okay, and
Right.
time?
I don't know the time, it would be the normal school board meeting, when,
Okay.
6:30, thank you.
6:30.
But I think there is an important discussion going on, and I should say, the discussion is not about, should we abandon the school, should we build onto the school in a massive way. It's really just looking at what is the state of this building now, what are some of the needs based on sort of larger standards that are set by the state, as well as the future of education, and what are people in the building saying we like or we don't like about the building. And it's been a fascinating discussion. I mean, it's been a great education. The other thing is I do want to thank the voters of District 3 for officially voting me in. I want to make myself available to any member of the city that wants to discuss an issue. I have my city email set up. It should be on the city website fairly soon. And I welcome, I work every day at 44 East State Street. You're welcome to come to the office. You have a good chance of running into me there. I'm available. I would love to talk. Usually you'll want to leave before I'll want to stop talking. And so I really appreciate the voters, and I look forward to serving on the council with everyone here. And congratulations around to those who did stand election.
Just congratulations to those who ran and were elected to the city by a majority of vote of their constituents in their districts. And welcome to new members, and congratulations to our great mayor for being willing to serve another term.
One thing I just wanted to raise was following up on the conversation we had on the PFAS issue. I thought it was a really good discussion, really informative. It seemed like there were a lot of open-ended questions. I think there's some work that could be done to try to kind of suss out what the city's options or what work we could do. But I just wanted to put that out there as something I'd love to follow up on at some point, maybe giving a little time and space to do some work, to have some more refinement of what the city's choices are, but just appreciated a really good conversation and hope we can follow up on what we might want to do about it. So putting that out there.
Before we leave that,
Yeah.
why don't we connect on timing and,
Yeah, that would be great.
because it yeah. And yeah, let's, yeah, I'd love to chat about that.
I would love that too. And then I wanted to say thank you, John, City Clerk's office, for a great run election, and to all the volunteers. Like, ton of community members came out. It was just, it ran great attendance and participation from voters. So yay, nice work. Great to see that democracy working. And congratulations to everyone who won their election. Really looking forward to working with you all.
Yeah, all right, so I also want to offer my congratulations to everyone who was just reelected, and also thank you for your willingness to serve, and also thank you to just everyone who ran for their willingness to put themselves forward. It's great and really important that people do that. I also want to thank particularly the voters for their support in voting for me as mayor. I mean, yeah, I know there were not a lot of choices, but nonetheless, I'm still very grateful for those folks who filled in the bubble. That's very grateful. Yeah, anyway, so I want to just report out on a couple of things. So we have this, it's not listed on the committees, but there's an organics collection and diversion committee. If anyone's interested, you're welcome to join. We've been meeting to, in part, to talk about the upcoming food waste ban that's taking effect in July for residents, and so we are hoping to help facilitate just getting the word out about that, and like what the requirements are. Like, if you do compost at home, you are allowed to continue to put bones and meat in the trash if you're composting other products. Otherwise, these kinds of sort of common questions. We're talking about maybe having some kind of like a compost festival. Not that's like an ongoing, year-to-year event, but particularly for this, because this is coming up. Let's have an event where we celebrate compost and help answer people's questions and maybe eat some ice cream. So that's on something maybe up and coming. And then, as you probably know, I'm on this committee that's looking at home energy labeling, home energy information, particularly at the time of sale. I just wanted you to be aware that we are continuing to iron out all of the, we've gotten a lot of great feedback recently, and so it's taking us a while to filter through it, and then also we're continuing to test the website that would be the mechanism that produces the score and the home energy cost estimations. And then also just want to make a note that I will have office hours here, right next door, right in this building, across that wall. 3:30 to 4:30 next Tuesday, 17th. Going to try to make that a regular thing. So, anyway, that is it for me. John, do you have anything?
Welcome, Jay. Had the election. It went pretty well. Almost caught me flat-footed. We had every indication of a certain level of participation because of the rate of early voting, which was not strong. Voting the Saturday before the election, which is usually also a good indicator, was not strong. And then we about got our butts kicked the day before. So that's when I put out the call to Facebook, oh my God, we're gonna get swamped. But anyway, we had plenty of people, so thanks to folks who helped or were available to help. You know, we did things a little different. We must have registered about, I don't know the numbers yet, about 120 new voters at the polls. Thank God, we had enough volunteers to manage that. And it seemed to work. We did run out of ballots in District 2. So we had to photocopy some and hand count them, but that didn't amount to more than 20-some, so no big deal, fun story. That's about it. But yeah, thanks to volunteers and voters and all the candidates, whether you won or not. And water bills are due Monday.
And Bill?
Well, welcome all. Congratulations to all of you for your elections or re-elections, and also thanks to everyone who ran. I also like to thank the voters for their support of the city budget and the items that were on there. Another strong showing. That's sort of our staff election. See how that goes, but voters do appreciate their support of the local government, and we will strive to deliver the goods. We've been spending a good portion of our time on coronavirus. We've talked about that plenty today. I don't need to add that, but that has really been a big thing. And otherwise, things moving along. We're hopefully moving into spring things soon. We'll see. That's all I've got. And thank you for scheduling those meetings so easily, so we can move that business forward.
Okay, great. So I think that is the end of all the items for tonight. So without objection, we'll consider this meeting adjourned.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.